What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So since we did have the transcript release for that Nintendo Q&A with shareholders, we have been seeing more and more of those questions translated over from the official text that Nintendo released, and it actually made quite a splash yesterday because it had to do with Nintendo and generative AI with the future going forward with development, and we'll go over Nintendo's answer here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a big sale that is currently live for PlayStation, bringing all kinds of AAA titles down quite a bit in price, and then we'll also be taking a look at Activision Blizzard, as some new reports show when we can finally expect those games to really make the jump into Xbox Game Pass. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton, and if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below, and of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with an IP people have been hoping that Microsoft would revive and make a game with, that being Banjo Kazooie. Well, there have been rumors floating around for a while that they are indeed developing something with that game in mind, but now we have a recent, we'll say, report from Jez Corden over on the Xbox 2 podcast that is basically refuting that completely now, with him saying that there is no Banjo game in development at this time, according to his own sources. And Jez also doesn't think that Microsoft will ever do anything with Banjo, and it's possible if they can't find a studio to develop it, as Rare has made it pretty clear that they are fine moving on to, as they have Everwild coming up, apparently, we'll see, and obviously Sea of Thieves, which has done very, very well for them, but Rare itself, they're just different from the Rare that made Banjo. That's long gone now, so they would have to find someone else who could make it, and you feel like with the number of studios they have and then subdivisions within those studios, someone would want to take a shot at a new Banjo game, but, well, based on what Jez is hearing, that might not be the case, and we really may not have a Banjo game in development, despite previous rumors, and I think that'd be a shame because I do believe a 3D platformer like a new Banjo game would just add more variety to Microsoft's ever-churning service with Game Pass. Also, we do have some new figures that were announced by PlayStation based on some of their more popular intellectual properties in recent games, which we can see this was over on PlayStation blog, introducing these different figures, saying the new PlayStation Studios collectible figures from Spin Master launches starting this August, and you can see some of them here with, like, for example, the big one they're pointing out, the deluxe figure 6-inch Aloy from Horizon Forbidden West. Now, they do have pre-orders that are live currently, even on Amazon right now, and it'll begin shipping in August. Some of the other ones that'll be following this up, which they have this also up over on their PlayStation Gear page. They have Atreus and Kratos kind of combined there. They also have Jin Sakai and Varl, of course, following up with Aloy from the Horizon series, and they look pretty good. I mean, they're priced, we have like $30 each, other than the 6-inch Aloy Deluxe Edition, that's $50. So, I mean, it's going to come down to the quality in person because they'll show us the best possible quality with these figures, but in the world of figures and statues, those are all right in terms of price. I mean, I've seen some of the first 4 figures get way out of control. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars for what are really nice statues, yes, but in essence, really just statues. So really cool for collectors or fans of any one of these games or just PlayStation Studios in general. So you might want to get your pre-order in if you wanted to grab one of these, as they most likely will be selling out and be fairly limited. Oh, and of course, we do have Star Wars Outlaws coming up at the end of August, and as expected, the game has now gone gold, which we can see this is posted up over on the official account, just saying Star Wars Outlaws has gone gold. Our team can't wait for you to start exploring the Outer Rim and living the life of a scoundrel. August 30th. Can't come soon enough. And, you know, I'm still unsure about this game. I'm kind of still caught in the middle. Like, I feel like this is a different take on what you expect from a Star Wars game, which usually involves Jedi, Sith, lightsabers, Force powers. This is going to go more in, as people have noticed, like the Uncharted route. So, from what they've shown so far, it's looked more and more interesting as they've shown off different aspects to it. I am going to be playing it, but it's not necessarily the biggest title I'm looking forward to here in a few months. But I did run a poll, actually, on the biggest games for August that people are looking forward to, and we'll see where Concord placed in that one. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and a recent question from their Q&A with investors that was during their annual gathering of the shareholders that happened a week or so ago. And I went through some rough translations as people were covering it live and basically just typing out what they were hearing as it was going on with different questions getting thrown around. But with the official release of the transcript from Nintendo, yes, still being translated over, but it's not necessarily from one source that is hearing it as it's happening. It's what Nintendo themselves want to be out there in written form. And one question I knew would come back around had to do with Nintendo and generative AI, which, as we've seen, AI has really been picking up steam. And it seems like it's almost at a frightening pace, you can say, based on the way it's being integrated into certain things, especially when it comes to PCs and your data also being intertwined with it. There's still a lot of questions around how exactly all of that's going to work, especially when you have AI learning mostly from stuff that's already out there on the web, and that brings up all kinds of copyright concerns there. But Nintendo was asked about this, and it makes sense why they would be asked, because they develop games, and the belief is that eventually AI will work to cut down on development time and development costs. Well, we can see President Furukawa with Nintendo responding, this over on Tweaktown. They have the translation of the official transcript saying, "In the game industry, AI-like technology has long been used to control enemy character movement, so game development and AI technology have always been closely related. Generative AI, which has been a hot topic in recent years, can be more creative, but we also recognize that it has issues with intellectual property rights. We have decades of know-how in creating optimal gaming experiences for our customers, and while we remain flexible in responding to technological developments, we have to continue to deliver value that is unique to us and cannot be achieved through technology alone." Massive sidestep here. Basically like, hey, we hear you. We understand the potential advantages of something like generative AI being intertwined with development. We're not really interested in being an early adopter for this in the development space. We'll let other studios and companies basically beta test this whole thing and figure out if it can actually work and save money before we dive in. And while Nintendo can be adverse to trying to get ahead of certain things, specifically when it comes to maybe generative AI or more like the technology stuff when it comes to pushing high fidelity visuals, because they understand that there's a development cost that comes with that. They have been around the technology, cutting edge technology in other aspects, as we've talked about with haptic feedback being a big focus for the Switch and the portable hybrid nature. I mean, that's something we hadn't seen done really before, not to that scale, and now it's really caught on just overall when it comes to the PC handheld space, and apparently Microsoft and Sony are kind of looking into it. So that's sort of where Nintendo likes to live when it comes to the cutting edge technology, more on the creative side, which generative AI can kind of get you into trouble because, as I mentioned, it trains itself through stuff that's already on the web. So because there is such a gray area right now when it comes to copyright and the legal side of things, Nintendo, who's very, very aware and familiar, we'll say, with the legal side of things when it comes to IP, ownership, and laws, probably aren't super excited of jumping into that gray area and just seeing what happens. In their minds, they have that Nintendo thought process, right, that they will hire people on and try to develop their games around. So it seems like in their mind, generative AI won't really play into that for now. Doesn't mean it won't happen eventually, as we've seen them do things recently, even like, oh, we're going to use Unreal Engine for some of our first-party games. So you never know. Nintendo will pivot and at times change things up based on the technological landscape. But I think for now, they're going to play it extremely safe when it comes to something like generative AI, at least for now. Next up, let's talk about Xbox Game Pass and Activision games, which is something people have been wondering, okay, when are those games just going to go into Game Pass? Can we just drop all of them in all at once? Kind of like what they did with Bethesda at that time, where they had a large bundle of games just go into the service overnight, and it added a ton of value to it. Well, we have seen at least Diablo 4 from Blizzard's side go into the service, and now it appears they are prepping to have some of those Activision titles go into the service, but not all at once, and There's some questions around the strategy there, but we can see this is posted up. This is over on Xbuter. It's from Extas Ones. Anyway, they're a credible leaker according to the forum. I'm sure they have that all figured out, we'll say. But they do say here, according to our sources and certain graphic evidence, I have been able to find out the arrival window to Game Pass for what appears to be the first, or one of the first, Activision games coming to Game Pass. The name is Crash Insane Trilogy, and it will land on Game Pass sometime in August. I don't know if it can play through xCloud. I would say probably would be able to if it's part of Game Pass Ultimate as expected, so we'll see there. Logically, I'm also looking forward to the arrival of Tony Hawk 1 and 2 and Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which I know are coming very soon, but I cannot guarantee their arrival to the service in the same month. They go on to say that there's really not much information around the Call of Duty games, which is something I'm sure that people are very, very interested in. When can we start expecting that, I would say, immediate drop of Call of Duty games all over the place, as that would certainly add a lot of interest in that subscription service. Windows Central did back up this claim, saying that Windows Central understands that this is correct, and this will be one of the next Activision published games to join Xbox Game Pass following Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. So it does appear, at least based on the information we have in front of us, that Microsoft would be going the route of drip feeding these Activision games. Is that a good idea? Well, I guess you could look at it and say they do need to have at least a continued release schedule of games for Game Pass. Dropping them in all at once, while it would be cool right now to just add that kind of value to your subscription service, they do want you to stay subscribed for months or even years on end. And the catalog right now they have in front of them, just with those Activision Blizzard games, I mean, that would help to just round out any big releases they want to try to have in a month. Let's say it's not going great for negotiations for a big third-party game and it falls through. Well, you can look around and go, okay, let's grab a Call of Duty game, throw it in here. Let's grab Tony Hawk 1 and 2. Let's grab Spyro Reignited Trilogy and just have something there for Game Pass. It's just a continuous cycle of games that have to be prepped and ready to go into the service. The one that I am curious about overall, well, great, Tony Hawk 1 and 2, I think that's an awesome game. Crash Insane Trilogy, Spyro. Call of Duty, I'm absolutely curious how they are going to navigate that, because if they launch the newest Call of Duty and then the same month, even the month before, they put a Call of Duty game in, even from the past, if that's maybe just as popular or more popular, could actually work to split some of the interest in Call of Duty and maybe even just the player base. So that's something they definitely have to figure out, is when you start releasing these Call of Duty games into Game Pass, how are you going to schedule that? I do feel like they're not going to launch one of those before this big Call of Duty game coming up, the next Black Ops, here in a few months, obviously, but maybe starting next year, every month or every other month, they start rolling out different Call of Duty games, as that would eventually add a tremendous amount of value to Game Pass. You could have an entire section in Game Pass that's just all Call of Duty, and I'm sure that would definitely draw a lot of interest and probably quite a bit of money and signups for the service when it all comes together. The question is, how long do we have to wait for something like that? At least right now, it seems in a month or two, we can expect to start seeing some Activision games go into the service, just not the big Call of Duty ones people are really asking for. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation's Essentials sale that will be live until July 18th. And as of now, there are a bunch of big AAA titles that are marked down 30, 40, 50%. And what I did was I went through the list and just picked out some highlights. And of course, there are still hundreds of other games that are on sale. So leave some suggestions down below in the comments as we go through this, but what I'll do is just put up an image of just the sales page and we'll sort of scroll through as I list them off, starting at the top here with Dragon's Dogma 2. While that is pretty new, it is at least 20% off, so if you've been looking at it, checking it out, there is at least some discount there, but not like a massive one. We also have Persona 3 Reload, that is 30% off. Monster Hunter Rise, 75% off. I had to throw Bully in there because it's an absolute classic from the PS2 days and it does work here, but 40% off. Forspoken, if you've been checking that one out, waiting for some kind of discount, I mean 60% off, and there have been a lot of updates and things done to it to try to fix it up, so I still don't think it's a great game, but it's at least better than it was at launch. Lords of the Fallen 2014, not to be confused with the most recent game, Lords of the Fallen. Anyway, it's 80% off. Nier Automata, that one's 60% off. Castle Crashers, ton of fun here, especially if you can take advantage of the couch co-op to it. It's a blast with a couple of friends. 80% off there. Octopath Traveler 2, 40% off. Kingdom Come Deliverance. This might be the move here. I have not played it yet. I know the second one is coming up here, but this one's 90% off. It's pretty cheap. Like a Dragon Ishin, awesome title, 60% off. Returnal, first-party Sony game here at 58% off. Castlevania Requiem, that one's 80% off. Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie, 35% off. Sonic Colors Ultimate, 60% off. Contra Anniversary Collection, you guys know I like to point out the collections because you get even more value there. That one's 80% off. Bayonetta Vanquish Bundle, awesome bundle there of two great games, 75% off. Ys 8, 50% off. Tales of Zestria, that one's 90% off. Cyber Shadow, really cool game there, especially for fans of old school platform titles, 50% off. And of course, I had to put it in there, Balan Wonderworld, 85% off. So as I mentioned, there's some pretty good games in there with steep discounts. Obviously, I mean, Balan Wonderworld, can't go wrong there with it being like $2 or $3, but let me know some of your suggestions if you've had a chance to look through the list of games here down in the comments. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some unfortunate information that's come out of a recent Bloomberg report, as Jason Schreier did interview Hironobu Sakaguchi, of course, the creator of Final Fantasy decades ago with Square Enix, as they are now partnering once again with Square Enix for Fantasian, that of course coming out later on this year, being published by Square Enix on all different consoles. Well, they discussed a few things with Jason Schreier at Bloomberg. One, they really seem to like, Sakaguchi really seems to like Final Fantasy XIV, and the other, their thoughts about maybe bringing up Lost Odyssey or Blue Dragon to modern platforms. We can see this was posted up in that report from Bloomberg. Saying, what's next then? Sakaguchi said that despite the newfound partnership, that being with Square Enix, he has no interest in revisiting Final Fantasy or any of his old franchises, in part because he switched to a consumer rather than a creator and doesn't want to glimpse at how the sausage is made. If I take on the Final Fantasy brand again, I don't know if I'll be able to genuinely enjoy Final Fantasy XIV as much. It's kind of the idea of if you're a big fan of, we'll say if you're a big fan of baseball and then you get into broadcasting or covering stats or just getting really intertwined with it in some way, you're going to be less interested in watching baseball a lot, right? So that's kind of the idea. If you've ever worked at a GameStop or a game store, like full time, you kind of get that idea of, oh, okay, I see, because then I see games all the time and I'm less interested in necessarily playing them as much as I would have previously if it was just kind of a hobby. So I get where he's coming at here when it comes to the Final Fantasy side of things. The next part is the one that I was like, oh, that's a shame. He says he has no interest in bringing older games such as Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon to modern platforms, despite recent rumors suggesting otherwise. He does want to find a way to revive the strategy game Terra Battle, which has released for phones in 2014 but is no longer playable. That is very random. I guess in his mind, you can play Lost Odyssey and you can play Blue Dragon right now. Those are backwards compatible. They're fully functional right now on the Xbox platform, the Xbox Series, Xbox One, that sort of thing. You can, of course, they could maybe put it into Game Pass and play through the cloud and stuff, I guess, but that's kind of unfortunate because I think Lost Odyssey, like I understand Blue Dragon, that is a game that has not aged the greatest. It's a very, we'll say, traditional RPG. You can tell it's an early 360 title, but Lost Odyssey, I still think has aged well. Like, you can play that now and it's still an awesome and unique experience. And I think it would do well enough. I'm not going to say it would do crazy numbers, millions and millions of copies. I think it would do well though, well enough for a Japanese RPG, the one that definitely relies more on the storytelling and at times you'll just kind of be reading walls of text, but seeing some of the lives that the characters would live through and really parts of it that were just downright sad and depressing, I think it really made for an awesome story, especially as you completed the game and saw what happened towards the end. It was a really cool game, and it's a shame that, yes, while it is something that you can play right now on your Xbox Series, who knows what the future holds for something like backwards compatibility and the idea of also releasing it onto something like on PC, on PlayStation, on Nintendo's platform. I do still think there is a large audience you can deliver this game to, so unfortunate stuff there. I guess technically they could always still decide, oh, maybe we can have a porting company work on this and stuff, and it wouldn't necessarily just be Sakaguchi. Maybe he wants to work on some new game or something after Fantasian, but unfortunate to see that. But it seems like he's pretty happy playing Final Fantasy XIV all the time. He mentioned that there were points where he forgot he was about to be in a meeting and someone had to message him in the game, tell him to get off the game so he could attend a business meeting for another game. So, hey, good stuff there. Maybe someday we'll see Lost Odyssey move to other platforms, but based on this interview, probably not happening anytime soon. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which of these game releases in August are you most excited for? It is Black Myth Wukong, 40%. Wow, okay. We have Visions of Mana, 28%. Star Wars Outlaws, 25%. Oh, wow. Madden NFL 25 got 5% of the vote. Concord got 2%. So, you know your game's in trouble in terms of public perception if Madden is more than doubling up your vote total. Man, Concord just cannot catch a break right now. We do have the beta coming up here in a couple of weeks, and there's going to also be an open beta, so maybe that can turn everything around for it, but this is a poll that I would have fully expected Madden to be in last place, but nope. It's a PlayStation first-party game named Concord. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Burn, who says, didn't you have a video showcasing the MIG switch? You're probably next on Nintendo's list. Well, I did showcase the MIG switch in the function it's supposed to have, which is backing up your own games. I even said, yeah, I would not download games because you will get banned for doing that, and people are getting banned. Go figure. But I think just showing off the cartridge, buying it from the source wouldn't get you in trouble, because people were looking at the lawsuit and it mentioned that Nintendo was going to try to get invoices and customer information. I think that'd be more or less to prove how much money, say, modded hardware made, not because Nintendo wants to start sending out letters and court orders and stuff to people who bought the $50 or $60 cartridge. I don't think that would work out for Nintendo overall when it comes to like consumers and stuff. I just think right now they're focusing on where the cartridges are coming from, not necessarily going out and knocking on everyone's door and waving their finger in the face and trying to get the MIG switch back. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Nintendo answering the question around generative AI. Do you think there really is a future for AI to become intertwined with development maybe 10, 15, even 20 years from now? And then also, what about Activision games going into Game Pass? Do you think if they started really rolling out these different titles from that entire back catalog, that more people would be interested? And would you be interested actually in signing up for Game Pass if they had a large section of just Activision Blizzard games available? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.